Hello and welcome back to the comics collection tour. If you survived the first video, you deserve a medal. That was a long one, sorry. But I have an explanation, or an excuse maybe. I realized while doing this that my collection isn't really suited for this type of tour. I watched similar collection tours from other channels and they are usually more omnibus or collected editions oriented, and that makes the whole tour more fluent, I guess. It's smoother because the books are like big bricks and you basically see everything just by looking at the spines. Now my collection is quite a lot album based, European albums, and even the American albums are more often in trade paperback form than in omnibus or some other collected format. Well, trade paperback is a collected format too, but it's a smaller one and it makes the spine smaller. You can't just see it, like visually get it just by looking at the spines, and that is very much the thing with European albums. You have to take them out, they are thin, so you have to take them out and show them. So I'm thinking that I'm not going to do this every year, and that means that I'd rather do this pretty well and detailed now. But I am trying to shorten the videos by half at least. And another thing about this particular cabinet, that it is really big. I mean, I can't even reach to the top of it. I think the room is about 2 meters 40 centimeters, and this is all the way up there, so there's a lot of stuff there. I'm going to go through now this cabinet and what it holds inside. It's much simpler selection, I guess, so this should be quicker. So let's jump right into it. Just like in the previous video, once we go inside the Death Star, there is a picture, different picture inside each of these doors. And this one used to be my manga cabinet. So I found this beautiful picture of Sanakan from Blam or Blame, or however it is correctly pronounced. So it's like 2 meter cyborg body there. This is a cool picture. I really love this one. The top shelf here is completely filled by different kind of duck comics. They're mainly here because some of the books are so massive that they don't fit anywhere else. They are even bigger than the absolute editions. This consists mainly of the Don Rosa collection. He is a superstar in Finland, and I don't think he can even walk freely on the streets if he decides to do that. This was originally bought for my son, so through him I found Don Rosa. Here's an interesting one. This, I think the English name is Quest for Kalevala. He made duck version of the Finnish epic called Kalevala. And this section here is all Karl Barks. I have 6 volumes of these. I think the series is completely 10 volumes of the duck stories he made. But the thing about Don Rosa and Karl Barks is that they've been collected gazillion times in different type of anthologies. It feels like every year there's some kind of collection coming out. And that's one of the reasons why I might be getting rid of some of these bigger books, as these are usually the more recent ones are like anthologies, collecting old stories with some kind of theme. I'm holding on to the Mickey Mouse ones because I don't have this type of books of them. And the old Mickey Mouse stories from USA, they are really good. But then there is, like, this book is from '79, also massive book with the theme of it's coming to pieces and even the spine is missing. And I've been reading this since '79. The thing is that This is all Garth stories. Here's some insight into the stories. But when this came out in '79, as it says here, all the stories here were not published in Finland until this one. And back then this felt like absolutely a treasure. Really good stories and great art. These were even kind of exciting and even a bit scary stories in a way, which I loved as a child because there was more depth to them, and I still like them. But the thing is that now these same stories have been collected in different type of books, so I'm kind of double dipping here, and I'm thinking of giving my up on these, although no one will accept that even for free, I guess. And then there's one theme book from Magica the Spell. It was a character that Karl Barks created. He didn't think to continue with that much. But the thing is that there was a massive need for duck stories in Europe and not enough production in USA. So many European countries started producing stories themselves. And all the stories here are from the Danish companies and Italian companies. So these are very different styles, all of them. It's their own take on the Magica the Spell. And of course the art style changes a lot per story. But the duck thing is in general something, it's way too big area to go. I have to kind of divide this into sections and come back to it later, because we got some Dragon Lord stories. It's like a big story arc. Then there are collections for different artists from Europe, like Dan Gippes doing the Karl Barks stories. They're written by Karl Barks and drawn by Dan Gippes. He is one of the best, if not the best, imitator of Karl Barks. Really good. And then one of my favorites, Marco Rota. Also a style that I grew up with and I really like it. But okay, enough of that. Let's go one shelf down. So here we have another shelf which is quite album heavy, but I try to be quick with it. First there's a Deadly Class, a big collected edition by Remender and Craig. I like this story, and this was one of the first American comics, so to speak, that I went into, and I found internet. I was very late to get into that internet ordering thing, and I just decided to take this big book because I thought that it's a nice book as an item, and it is. And some of the panels really gain more presence by being bigger. So it's one of those art styles that I guess would benefit from being bigger. I said in the earlier video that I'm not into bigger books, but here we are. Having said that, the rest of the series is in trade paperback format. This is one of my issues because I didn't want to wait. When there was new stories out, I really wanted to continue it, as this one, the first big volume, ended up in a cliffhanger. So when I got the first trade paperback, that's how I continued after that. I think they are now collected, at least some of this is collected in a bigger editions, but being in Finland, trading up is difficult. I mean, yeah, buying is easy, but I can't so easily get rid of the old ones. That's why I'm usually stuck with whatever I decide to do first. That's just how it is. Next on the shelf, this part is all Tintin. Well, that's the movie adaptation. And Tintin is one of those comics that I grew up with. It's like Asterix, Tintin, Lucky Luke. Those three are part of my life and childhood. They are in a way more than comics. And I have owned these many times, because back when I was a kid, I had to sell these away to get some other comics, then I bought them back again and again. And I have had the original versions and updated versions, and I usually read them until they break. Like this is coming to pieces very soon. The tape is not holding anymore. And when it fails, I just buy a new one. These are available in Finland all the time, everywhere. The rest of this has two meanings. There's Juan Hamme, which is the main theme in this collection. And then there is Cinebook. It just happens that Cinebook is the company translating European comics into English, and they deserve a reward for that. And that's the way I got to read more European comics than that was available in Finnish. I know I will be doing videos of Juan Hamme, or at least his series in future, but this one I have to show you. This is one of my favorite, although it's not his strongest stories, but I read this since childhood and this hit me really hard back then. But it's a thing that I want to discuss in closer detail later. And there's another album now linked to it. The next series here is 13. That was inspired by Jason Bourne. This is drawn by Vance. Very European. This is like super European, like the style. The thing with Juan Hamme is that he writes a lot of different series, and so he's using also many different artists. They are different, but they have that very clear, distinct European style, all of them. It's like he's aiming for a more realistic look. He's not writing for I couldn't see him writing for Lucky Luke or Tintin and such. So it's always a bit more realistic. The next bit here, this part is all Largo Winch. Another story that I really have to talk about later. This is a comic book series that should not work, but it does. And the art is mind-blowing. It's like almost too perfect. It's not photorealistic, but it is in a cartoony way. Great stuff. Oh, and this is also by Juan Hamme. Then his other series called Wayne Shelton, now drawn by Nihei. And if you look at the style, again, not that far from Largo Winch. And then there is another series by him called Thorgal. This is a massive one, also has many volumes. I have more than these two, but they are in my waiting pile, and they get here only once I've read them. The strange thing about the English Thorgal is that Cinebook didn't publish them in a chronological order. They didn't publish them in the order that they came out originally. With the few volumes I own here, I think what Cinebook is going for is they are publishing the stories in a chronological order within the story. So this shows the main characters as a child. And that's why they put this first in their own series of albums. I don't fully agree with the decision, but then again, if you're about to collect all of the stories, it doesn't matter really. The art is by Rosinski, and this is also like mind-blowingly good stuff. And the next, surprise, is another series by Juan Hamme, drawn by Amond, Lady S. And this is in this type of style. Again, very close to what you just saw. If you look quickly, you might think that these are the same artists, but when you start reading them, you realize the differences. They are pretty obvious. And then a few Then the rest is Cinebook. I didn't know where else to put them. There's one of Ian. I think there are 3 books in this series. Ian is short for Intelligent Artificial Neuromechanoid. No, there's actually 4 albums here mentioned. Okay. And the last 4 albums are Damocles. Damocles Agency is a bodyguard agency, and this is the story of Ellie working in that agency and the adventures and tight spots she gets into. Great action fun. That was it. Then we go one down. And this next shelf is a mixed bag, and there's a lot of empty space, which, as I said, for me is potential. This is place where I can buy more comics too. Let's start from this end. It's Blacksad. I've been collecting this in Finnish. Every panel in this book is a piece of art. You can stop to every panel and just keep staring at the colors, the line work, the expression on the faces. Everything is super detailed, lively, dynamic. It's a masterpiece, graphical masterpiece for me. But here's a funny thing. I have the 4 first albums in Finnish, and it was hard to find the 5th one, Amarillo. This was sold out in Finland. I waited. Nothing happened. It didn't come back to print. I couldn't find it secondhand. And now there's a new Blacksad just coming out, 2-parter story. So I decided, okay, I need to get the missing piece here, Amarillo. I decided to order it in English as I saw that they had this hardcover version out there by Dark Horse. Although this is kind of European album side, not exactly, but almost. But it's still, it's dwarfed next to the ones how it's published in Finland. This is the way it's published in Finland. It's much bigger format, as the publisher understand that the art has so massive impact on the story. It's Arktinen Banana, which is called Arctic Banana, which does this in Finnish. So thanks for Dark Horse for shrinking my comics. But yeah, it's still good. I mean, Amarillo is still great. This size of a book it's not a bad thing. You can still enjoy the graphics very much because it's the basic album size. But in this context, it's a bit funny to have that small. Next one is Siegfried. This is a story made by Alex Alice, and it's based on Viking lore and the music of Wagner. It's pretty amazing. It's a fantastical story, and the art is mind-blowing again. I saw this in the store and asked the salesperson if the 3 album is all that there is, and they said yes, so I took the whole series in one go. So I knew that I'm not going to miss anything. Pretty amazing stuff. Like this. And there's the 3rd album. Well, actually, this is the first one. This is 2nd, and this is the 3rd volume. That's the way it goes. Next, I have a Private Eye by Brian K. Vaughan. I just like him as a writer, but the shape of the book kind of dictates where to put it. I have another shelf for Brian K. Vaughan comics, but this has to be here. It doesn't fit the regular shelf. Such a long book. And this is where the clothing cabinet size becomes handy. And there is a book that is hard to miss. Big Damn Sensitive by Frank Miller. This is the most ridiculous book I have. Very hard to read unless you have to read it in particular way to have it on a table or on a sofa. Not the one you easily enjoy in bed. But such a good stuff. I'm really happy I got this. I was thinking of whether should I buy this or not. And to be honest, I went to online and see what the stories are in this whole world. And I was a bit distracted. I didn't understand fully how there were so many different formats and everything. And I was thinking, how do I get the whole thing? And then I lost my patience and I just ordered the big damn city. And then we are slowly moving to my massive manga collection. Well, there's a few more books on this, but I'm a beginner on this. First, there was time when I didn't like manga at all. There are certain graphical things in it that I might get into in later videos that I didn't like, but now I'm past them and I get to enjoy this, which is good. Blade of the Immortal. I bought this because I like the Berserk series. This is also, the art is really beautiful. I really love the art. I'm not so sure about the story and I'm still on the fence if I should continue with this. If someone watching this is more into manga and knows this more intimately, I'd like to hear your opinion. Should I continue this series? I'm a big fan of samurai scene. When I was younger, I used to watch the Kurosawa movies like The Seven Samurai again and again and again. That's why I go into these. And I'd be interested to know of the Lone Wolf and the Cub and the Vagabond, if they are anything worth reading. Because I'm planning on starting on them too. Then there's Pluto, this way. And this is unfortunate case because I just bought one and I love it. You can see from just the one volume that this is great stuff. The way it's written, the way the plot goes, art is great. Everything is great about this. However, I saw some of the volumes go out of print. And then I panicked and I didn't order anything else because I want to have the whole run and I'm thinking maybe they are running out of print and then I'm stuck with not the full series. But yeah, this is something that I'm definitely going to. Once I see someone selling all of them, I will buy all of them in one go. But that's why I only have one of these. Then Junjito's Tumi. This is horror. And unfortunately, horror doesn't really work for me. This is one of the books, there's so much good stuff said about this that I decided to order and try. The art is good and all that, but for some reason, horror has never worked for me. Not in the movies, not in comics form. I mightn't like it more in the regular books as stories, but for some reason the graphical horror never works for me. That's it. Then we get more manga downstairs. This is one of my favorite shelves of all of this, as now we got to the Tsutomu Nihei. This is all about him and especially Blam or Blame. I still don't know how it's pronounced, but it doesn't matter. And I have the master edition and this is the picture also on this door here. And this series is the thing that blew my mind. Absolutely blew my mind. This made me fan of manga. And I've been reading this since I think 4 or 5 times already. And I'm already planning to do another run. This is an experience. It's one of those comics that are unlike anything. And the vastness of the place that it happens in. Keely as the main character, and he has one of the coolest guns in any story. The weapon And also the fun fact that the place itself, the city where they are, is probably the main character in the whole story. And when you got to the last page, the first thing you will think is like, what? Did they fool me? The very minute I got to the last page of the last volume, I went online and had to find more about this. No other comics have driven me into things like that as fast as this one. Then there's Abara from Tsutomu Nihei. Very same kind of style as Blame. I call it Blame. And this continues. This is a really nice kind of add-on to his stuff. Great stories with the same type of art. Then there's Biomega. This is a strange one. The way it starts is more understandable than where it's going. It suddenly changes in the middle. I think it was supposed to end and then he just continued it. The next is Aposimz. The first thing I have to say that I don't like this original manga size. First, my eyesight isn't that great, and also Tsutomu Nihei's art would benefit from bigger panels. And here he changes his styles completely. He doesn't use the dark tones almost at all. The story of Aposimz makes me feel like it's a video game. Like each story is, the characters walk a bit, they fight a bit, and at the end there's a boss. And then you go to the next volume and so on. I think there are more out now. I would just love to see this upgraded to Master Edition. And the last one, I have Knights of Sidonia. How is it? This way. I only have one volume of this, and I'm still thinking if I should continue. This was more thought out. I think it felt like the story and everything was, how do I say it, more commercial in a way, and not as wild as the Plum. I think he was trying to make more coherent and more easy to understand story. But now that I have almost everything else from him, I'm kind of feeling the pressure of getting rest of the Knights of Sidonia. But this is definitely something that I might come back to later in later videos. Okay, then we go one more down. This stuff is a mixed bag also. It starts with the Red Star, a series that I highly recommend. I did a video on this. It was a downer video as it was on the just after the Ukraine war started. But I highly recommend this series. It uses as its core idea is the Russian lore and its history, which sadly is made of tragedy and sorrow. But it's also a good source of stories that captivate. Unfortunately, it is rooted heavily on the reality that we see now, but it doesn't lessen how great these stories are. And I bought this volume from IDW because I only had 3 albums and I didn't know that there was a 4th one. It never came to Finland. At least I didn't see it. Then I heard that there's a 4th volume out that continues the story, and it's included in this IDW collection. This is volume 2. It was parts 3 and 4, and in the first one there is parts 1 and 2. I didn't buy it because I already have them in this much bigger format. But as you see, the art is computers and hand art combined. But I don't show it too much as I already have a video about that. But I thought that this volume would make me happy, and so I have now all the 4 volumes. But then I found out that there is another print. I don't know if it was IDW's, but there's some even bigger print that was only available in USA. At least I didn't find it anywhere else, that has some extra stories that are not in the continuity of this storyline, but they are in the world of the Red Star. There you go. So if I someday visit USA, I might
that down. Then I have a few humanoid publishing stories, European classics from Bilal. I just buy these when I see the art and it's sci-fi. I buy it. That's all I can say. And the same continues here. Juan Gimenez, the fourth power. These are big, very big formats. And I guess if you don't remember his name, I'm sure you'll remember the art style. This is the same person who made Metaparans, art for the Metaparans. And we are in the very same ballpark here. Then there is Preacher, 2 absolute editions, and then the rest is in trade paperbacks. I am the worst buyer of absolute editions. I have only few series in absolute editions, and I think they are the ones that you shouldn't get in absolute editions. I bought this because I hadn't seen this type of book anywhere before this. But once the novelty of this publication kind of grew old and I was past the honeymoon, I realized that it doesn't do anything for the series. I did buy a second one, but then I moved on to the trade paperbacks as I realized that the art is good, but it's more about the story. I think the thing that gets most benefit from being big is the covers by Fabry. But this is a mean story, and I like the writing of Ennis. Great thing, but yeah, it's one of those books actually where I would gladly downgrade these absolutes to trade paperbacks. There's lots of Garth Ennis written stories and drawn by someone. Pilgrim. When I found out the Preacher and the way he writes, I was laughing all the way through this series. It was so politically incorrect stuff, and yeah, so I just started buying all the stuff he makes. There's Boys, I got 1 trade paperback like this, and then I have even a bigger issue. I think this contains this story also, but The Boys is something that I didn't get into. I've heard a lot of good stories about the TV series, but after the first volume, the bigger one, I felt it was boring. It just didn't go anywhere. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I should read the whole thing. Then there's one from TKO, Sarah. This is also written by Garth Ennis. This is a great story about a Russian sniper in World War II. And the thing that makes this a bit closer to me is that in World War II, Finland, my country, was fighting against Russia. So there's even more intimate connection there. Then I have Orbital series here. It's in a box that says heavy metal, because I used to have my heavy metal magazines here. I'm just kind of hanging on to these boxes. Can't let go of them, I guess. But Orbital, I made a separate video of this already. One of my all-time favorites. Check out the video if you want to know more about that series. Then there's one comic that I got from my wife when I was ill, so she bought me a comic. A lot of this type of comics come out in Finland. This is a Finnish comic about the Winter War, well, against the Russians. This type of lore and stories, they are very popular still in Finland. And then an exception to the horror thing, Aliens, wow, by same Stokoi, Dead Orbit. This is art-wise and story-wise perfect alien stuff. I did try to order the Alien Omnibus a while back, but it was sold out and never got it. Although I'm not sure if it's as good as this. Maybe someone could help me out if Alien comics are anything worth reading for, but Dead Orbit was 10 out of 10. Then one more down. Here we are on the floor level, and I guess this shelf could be called What Should I Do With You? First of all, I have removed a lot of stuff from here, but let's see what we got still here. Anthology Flight. Interesting series. Many very different style artists. Some of the stories are kind of continuing from book to book. There are more than these 4, and I think I try to find them later. I like this series. Then of course Mouse. That's, I guess, a book any comics collector should have, or at least read once. Oh, then a funny one. Apocalypse. It's a Swedish O. It's like A with a round thing on it. And Åbo is Swedish for a Finnish city called Turku. And these are actually 2 music artists living on those, famous artists living in those cities. This is made by a comic book club of that city. They have 22 different artists, and they are each drawing a story of apocalypse, some kind of world ending that is somehow tied to this city of Turku. Then there's 1 volume of Stormwatch, and I don't really know what it is. I'm really bad at superhero stories. And this is somehow connected to the Wildstorm universe. Another thing I don't know anything about. Maybe someone else will. Here's a great one. I don't know why it's here. Well, it's vertical. Okay, maybe I should find a better place for it. We 3. Really nice book about animals as weapons. Next is Rogue Trooper by 2080 publication. The reason why I bought this is I have a very good Rogue Trooper story in one of my heavy metal magazines. I have read it many times, so when I found out this collected album was out there, I bought it. The stories are not as good as the one in the heavy metal album, the magazine though. The next one is a strange one. Rafael Albuquerque and Mike Johnson, 8 Outcast. Volume 1, and I have never seen Volume 2, though I haven't checked for a while. The art is great, the story is interesting, but I'm not sure if this is going to continue. I have to keep a look out on this one. The next is Wool. It's a comic adaptation of Hugh Howley's science fiction or dystopia book. And the last 2 are by Alan Moore. Providence. This is a strange one because I'm sure that I had all the 3 volumes in this series, but I can only find 1. Maybe I just dreamed of reading them. But that's the cheap way to read comics, right? Dreaming that you've read it. And I like the story in my dreams. And the last one is From Hell. One of those Alan Moore's masterpieces. Some say it's Watchmen, some say it's From Hell. He has so many to choose from. But as you see, lots of potential here. And that was the second cabinet. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you in the third part.